This is Pamela Brewer welcoming Dr. Tracey Wilen to the MyNDTALK audience. Dr. Wilen is a prominent thought leader on the impact of technology on society, work, and careers. She has authored 11 books. That makes her a very busy person. And her newest book, Employed for Life, 21st Century Career Trends, was released earlier this year. We're going to be talking to Dr. Wilen today about taking a career selfie. We hear about people taking selfies all the time, but not so much about a career selfie. Dr. Wilen, welcome to MyNDTALK.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, it seems like you have been very busy, and you talk a lot about the world of employment today and the impact of technology on some of the trends in today's job market. Let's start with some of the work trends that you've identified in what you describe as a digital world. What does that mean? Are we all working online?
No, Pam. What I started to reflect. I saw these statistics released by Google that, at least on the Android anyway, that we take 93 million selfies per day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of self-reflection and self-focus.
Or something.
Or navel-gazing, that's
right.
But comparatively, when I looked up for statistics on how long we spend actually on our personal career planning, it was only about an hour and a half a year. So I said, something's wrong with this picture. We're spending a lot of time doing some fun things like taking photos of ourselves, but are they really helping us get ahead in a digital life and in our work?
Now, are you saying an hour and a half a year?
A year, yeah. That was a research study was done on college students after they graduated college who were in the most need of a job and a career plan. Were only, however, spending an hour and a half a year. And then when I looked at where adults are spending their time, it wasn't on career planning. It was on things like going out or attending sports events or eating or planning weddings and doing anything else that you can do other than planning your career. And I said, something's wrong with this picture because you'll be working, half your life, a third of your day working. We should maybe think about that more.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, there's so much of one's self-esteem that is often, sometimes too much, but certainly a lot of your self-esteem is caught up in whether or not you are working and how you're working, and if you feel as though you're working in a field that feeds you, whether it's financially or emotionally. And so the fact that we're spending an hour and a half a year on a plan for something that is so critical to our sense of our emotional well-being is pretty astounding.
It is, and I think that's part of that shift from the classical world to the digital world, which in the past we didn't have to think about it because the firm thought about it for us, and they sort of took care of us, and we stayed there, in one job for life. But the reality today is that isn't realistic. In fact, adults are changing jobs every 4 years, 4 months. So we have to start to think about how to own our careers because the world has changed so much.
Well, and just the idea, there may be some folks listening even now who are saying every 4 years, 4 months. Now, for some folks, that's a good thing because you get to grow and expand and all those yummy things. But for somebody else who really is from that era where you graduated from high school or college, got that first job and stayed there until you became CEO, this 4 years, 4 months number is a bit outstanding.
Yes, it is, and it can be a shock. For some people, it's self-motivated change. For some people, it's unpredicted change, whether through layoffs or company reorganizations or transitions. So I encourage people that, these are statistics that are real, and you could be one of those statistics. If you are still in the same firm and have been there forever, you may be one of the very few. And so you need to anticipate changes and plan for it. And that's the whole idea of take a career selfie in addition to taking all those nice photos, but take a career selfie.
A career selfie is quite frankly going to do you a lot more good in the long run than those other selfies. You start off by saying some things that are really kind of amazing, I guess, and sort of at least pulled me up short as I looked at the difference between what was in terms of the work world and what is now. First thing you say is that the need for a loyal worker, which used to be everything, has been replaced by the need for the entrepreneurial employee, and that firms value loyalty, certainly, but now they're looking for value-added person. Can you talk about that? How does that shift affect folks in the work market today? What does that mean?
Well, it's much more competitive. So firms are only lasting around 10 years. So firms are saying, I need people who can be constantly thinking like the CEO, entrepreneurial in their approach, increasing sales, streamlining processes, improving customer service ratings. And a lot of this has to do with modern-day succession planning. We need to develop leaders much younger than in the past because just being loyal at work doesn't mean that you'll be the next in line. And so, companies are saying, I really need that entrepreneurial employees. Contribution is really key today.
And thinking about it from that perspective, again, that person who's been doing the job and thought loyalty was the thing, this is kind of a scary thought that now all of a sudden they have to do something that might be entirely outside of their comfort zone.
Yes, it is, and I think a good indicator that you can use is look at the people around you. Is someone younger than you getting promoted? Is someone newer than you getting promoted? And ask yourself why. Are they approaching their job in a different way that you might be approaching your job? Are they initiating ideas and developing opportunities for the firm instead of waiting to be told what to do? And I think in the past, many of us were given very, defined instructions on what our job was and what we're supposed to do, and then that was it. And today it's a little different. You need to expand the box of your work.
So if you're the kind of person who's constantly looking for a list of rules to follow, you're not going to be as successful as somebody who's going inside and thinking about new and unique ways to do things.
That's right, and I think part of it is that people can find out what you ask your manager. If you're still interacting with HR personnel, ask them, how can I contribute to the firm? What's different about how you promote people or develop leaders? Are there things that I should be doing differently? Always ask for feedback so that you can stay right on track with what the firm is looking for.
Now, you said a few moments ago that firms are existing about 10 years. So are you saying that if I start a business today, the chances are in 10 years I'll be done?
Well, I think it depends on the firm and the funding and the idea and the strategy. But the reality is that new firms today are lasting around 10 years. It's just reflects upon how competitive the world has gotten. So it's the people who can stay ahead of that curve and really act like an entrepreneur and CEO of their firm and saying, who are my competition? Where are the unpredictable competitive forces coming from? How is globalization affecting me? I think that's really important today to really just stay alive.
Well, there's some anxiety levels that have already gone up just now because what they've heard is, I can't go to my job and just sort of relax and do my job. I've got to be looking around and looking at my competition, and it almost sounds like a battle.
Well, it's not a battle. I mean, if you look at work, it's a two-way exchange. You're going to work and you are getting paid. You may be also getting certain benefits. You are also getting the opportunity to get experience, skills, and perhaps training. That's a two-way exchange. In exchange for that, you're contributing to the growth of the firm. You might even be getting stock options. So it's a two-way exchange now between the firm and the employee. You're benefiting and they're benefiting, and you both benefit if the company grows, because obviously then there's even more opportunities created. So I look at it as much more exciting than in the past, where you came and did a job and you did it forever and you got bored to tears. You couldn't wait to retire.
You say there are many things that you're saying that, again, sort of turn on one's ear. the old, and I guess that's the point, that this was the old way of thinking. But in the old days, and I don't know whether they were good or not, but in the old days, very often your job was to make your manager look good. Period, end of story. And a lot of people would grumble, but they knew that that was kind of what they were supposed to do. You're saying that that concept is replaced with how strong your personal brand is and how it impacts the firm's brand. Talk about that. What does that mean? I hear about branding all the time.
Sure. So you're exactly right. In the past, our job as employees to make our manager look good to their manager, and in return, they took care of you. But firms are realizing that it's not the managers who's the touch point to the customer. So, for example, if you walked into a hotel, the first person that you might meet would be the bellboy, the front desk, the concierge. Your impression of that operation, that organization, is based on your interaction with the frontline people. And so firms are realizing that the employee base, whether in a call center, whether in the sales force or marketing team or dealing with vendors, they're the face of the firm, and they're the ones that really need to reflect a positive image for the firm. And, we're also moving into this era where hierarchy is getting flattened and flattened and flattened. And we all need to have a little more empowerment and responsibility. And personal brand is exactly what it is when I meet you, do I walk away and say that's a positive brand, or do I walk away and say that's negative, and then my whole image of that company is just reflected on that one interaction?
Interesting. I'm thinking about the world of being politically correct, and I'm sort of marrying that to the concept of your personal brand and what you represent right out of the box, and wondering how managers deal with what might seem like a clash between the company brand and employees' individual brand and being politically correct. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, that's where I'd like to pick up. Folks, this is Pamela Brewer. You're listening to Mind Talk, and we're having a conversation about work trends in the world today. We'll be right back. And we're back, and this is Pamela Brewer, and the conversation continues with Dr. Tracey Wilen, who is a leader on the impact of technology on society, work, and careers. Dr. Wilen, just before the break, I asked you to sort of look at the connection, if you see that there is one, between being politically correct, the firm's brand, and the individual brand who is representing the firm, maybe at the front desk, maybe on the telephone, maybe in a meeting. How does that all come together and be useful?
So that all comes together on a concept called corporate culture. And that has really been highlighted and spotlighted even more today than in the past. That companies, and corporate culture is really, I would describe it as the process and the language of how companies get things done. And companies are spending a lot more time now making sure that employees understand what the firm represents, what the firm brand is, and they're part of it. So that when I meet someone from an Apple or a Starbucks or a Southwest Airlines, I have a consistent interaction with that individual that represents the brand. And a lot of firms are taking more time in really developing their employees from day one, whether it's a boot camp or intensive training on what the firm is about, what it means, and what's the type of language and appearance and discussions that you have representing the firm.
Including appearance.
Appearance is also, you might be reading in the press about, certain firms believe in uniforms, certain firms believe in casual Fridays but formal Monday through Thursdays. Certain firms have protocols about what the attire is when you're out with a client. All of this makes up the brand of the firm, and the employees need to represent that. Now, you may not fit with the brand of your firm, and you should know that because you might be a better fit in a different firm. But firms are really getting much more transparent and communicative about what they expect from employees.
When I think about my own personal brand, if I find what goes into that, into how do I brand myself? Do I think about myself as a person who works with this company, or do I think about myself as a person with these particular goals and values, and that's my brand? What goes into brand thinking, if you will?
Well, there's numerous things that can go into brand thinking. So let's say you're working at a company and your interest is you want to get ahead of the company. Think about walking into an elevator and the CEO walks in with you and you're going to travel up 5 floors together. And she turns to you and says, "Tell me, I haven't met you before, what do you do for the firm?" You should probably have an elevator pitch, and one that describes exactly what you do and how you contribute to the firm, because her second question may be, where do you see yourself at this company in 1 year? And you should have a list of your aspirations. How you just present yourself to that CEO can leave her with a lasting impression, hopefully positive, about you. But it's not just about the dialogue and the dress. It's also about, now today we have social media. What kind of messages, photographs, and images are you projecting about your personal brand? Are you doing volunteer work and positioning that? Or are you going out and attending parties and positioning that? Because unfortunately, the world has become very transparent, and people will look at all aspects of your life, and that needs to come together into something that you're comfortable with that represents you.
You know, I was interested to read your comments about social media and the impact of social media on job search activities, on being offered a job, on seeking a job. LinkedIn, you identify as a critical resource.
So if you are looking for a job, out of all the social medias, LinkedIn is the one that is most focused on that activity in your life. The reason is it's really like a very sophisticated job board. It's the place where most recruiters will go to find candidates, both outside recruiters and managers from firms. And it is a way that you can advertise, your great skills, experience, and capabilities. And so that is a focused media board just for job networking and job hunting.
So it really does make sense to pay a lot more attention to LinkedIn if a job is something that you're looking for, or a contract or a contact.
Yes. I mean, that today that is the tool that you will find that most recruiters is their first go-to. I mean, there's other tools. You can go to job boards. Some of the other social media sites are building up job capabilities, such as Twitter and Facebook. But right now, LinkedIn is the de facto place, and they just have a hold on that marketplace. And if you think about it, in the old days, we called it a Rolodex. It's really a digital Rolodex,
yeah.
And it's just at your fingertips, so you can find out about people there.
And your guidance is that once you do LinkedIn and you get a contact, then you go to Google and do some research.
Well, you absolutely want to know, how to get to the hiring manager. So if you were, for example, looking for a job, You can be passive and wait for someone to find you on LinkedIn, or you could be more assertive and say, well, I really want to work for this company. And so I can go and do a research on the company, the hiring managers, the executive staff, the culture of the organization, and plan a strategy using LinkedIn to use the networking tools, the direct mails or different assets that they have available to you to meet the people that you'd like to work for or network with.
If you identify a company that is your dream company, and you know what your dream job would be, but you discover from doing your research that there are no jobs available, do you still pursue that company, or do you look elsewhere?
Well, if this was a company that you absolutely wanted to work for, and you know that the position that you're truly qualified for, and I just want to clarify that, a lot of people have a dream job that they're just not qualified for doing, and companies they don't hire people for what they want to do. They hire people for what they can do starting day one.
Gotcha.
So they hire you for your experience stuff. But if you really wanted to work for a company, I would get to know all those people in that division and department that you wanted to work, because you just never know when the opening, there could be something in discussion that just wasn't posted yet. Mm-hmm. There could be budget being, accrued for a position, but they didn't know that there was the perfect person out there. And a lot of people today actually create their own jobs for firms, because they come in as that entrepreneurial employee and say, you know what you're missing in this firm? Here's how I can help, and here's how I've done this before, mm-hmm. and here's how I can do it for you.
So don't allow what you find out with your research to be the end of your pursuit, if this is a pursuit that really matters to you.
If it's a pursuit that matters to you, yes, I wouldn't stop there, but I wouldn't limit myself to just one firm. I mean, there's many great firms out there, and if you just hang your hat on saying I'm only going to work for this one firm, it may never happen, and you may be better off looking at clients of that firm or competitors to that firm, because then you become more valuable to that firm, and maybe you need to make a stop before you actually get to that end goal.
So clearly what I'm hearing you talk about is an expansive way of doing the research that is important for your end goal, but not to be so narrowly focused, which again I think is perhaps different from pursuits of old, where you wanted to be, let's say, a teacher, and that's what you wanted to be, and period, end of story. You're saying really explore what's out there.
Yes, I think it's all about personal exploration today. If you think about it, you're probably going to be you're going to be living probably to 100, and you'll probably be working 50 or 60 years. You could have effectively 5 or 10 careers over that period of time, and they could all be well-developed careers. So to me, it isn't about passion. I understand passion, but your passion might change. What you want to do in your 20s may be completely different than what you want to do in your 30s.
Sure.
And you may have a different idea and passion develop for your 60s and 70s. And so I would explore and just see what options are out there. Plus, new jobs are created every day, a lot of it due to technology.
Technology. Talk about the impact of technology. You mentioned 3D printing and robotics. How does that impact the workplace, and how does that impact my ability to find a job?
So when I started in the workforce, I actually was in manufacturing. And 3D printing and robotics are key technologies now in manufacturing that didn't exist before. So if I was still in manufacturing today, I would look at where is it going? What are some of the technologies that I should learn about and maybe even get my feet wet, right, using them? Because that's really, where the future is going. So some ways that people can do that is, if you're working in a firm and you see 3D printing coming in or robotics, get asked to work on a project so that you can actually use and touch the technologies, or at least on a cross-functional team, or at least learn and meet with the vendors to learn about how these technologies are changing the future of manufacturing. And this is happening in many industries. That's just one example.
If I see myself as not having a technical cell in my brain, and I know that 3D printing is coming. I know about robotics. I know there's this thing called an internet, but none of it is my thing. Am I out of the job market?
No, you're not out of the job market, and I wouldn't classify yourself or whoever as non-technical. There's a good chance that you have a smartphone or a cell phone, because there's 7 billion people who have them, so you've got to be one of them. And if you're using Facebook, it's the third largest country in the world if you tally up all the users. So I know people are using technology. It's just sort of streamed into your life without you realizing it, so you're more technical than you think. But I think for individuals, you look at your day-to-day job and say, what's happening in my world? I work with a lot of people who are in radio and TV and streaming media, social media, sort of seamlessly seeped into their lives. And they said, okay, now I need to understand and learn how to use Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and a lot of these new technologies, because it really helps me in my job. So I think if you can find a technology that's useful in your job, it will be easier to learn.
Everything that I hear you saying underneath it has the theme of looking for what works and not being hampered, quite frankly, by what you're afraid of.
Exactly. When I got out of school and I compare to the job, how many jobs there were then and the job today, there's 30% more job occupations that you would never have heard of when I got out of school. So that to me says in 10 years or 5 years for students coming out of school, there's going to be that many more exponentially different kinds of jobs available. And it's worth learning about them because a lot of them are quite interesting. I mean, you can become a social media guru or you can become a digital marketer. There's a lot of new jobs emerging in the healthcare or through wearable technology. Or mobile devices. This is very exciting compared to the past, right? Where you had the choice as a public sector.
Right.
Are you going to be a lawyer? What are you going to do? Today, there's many, many more options.
One of the points that you make is about retirement. You say that many people agree that 60 is the new 40. But 60 was also the time when people would either start to look at retiring in a minute or have already retired. How should we be thinking about retirement these days?
So retirement, to me, is different than in the past. It used to be that you worked for a company and then you would retire, get your gold watch, and then you would do all the activities that you didn't have a chance to do while you were working, and that might be traveling or spending time with your grandchildren. Today, retirement is really an extension or a transition from what you're doing now. So you might be in a corporation now, and retirement to you might be your second act or what a lot of people call an encore career. So it might be that you're not necessarily working for a corporation, but you might be pursuing volunteer efforts. You might be pursuing a nonprofit role. You might be starting your own business. You might be taking your skills from the corporate world and developing a consulting practice. So there's many ways that people are redefining retirement as an active retirement because, let's face it, people are healthy, people are smart and educated, and they still want to be participating and doing things. And in some people still want to be making money. So, retirement today is really just an extension of what are you going to do next.
Is there a point at which you're just too old to look for a job? Let's say you're 70 or 75 or 80 years old. Are you too old?
Well, I just met a gentleman at 102 who works at Walmart. So I would say he would say never. And I have another colleague whose grandfather is still working at 99 as a welder. So I think it's individualized. A lot of people really do want to be active and working and not too old because it keeps the mind busy and it keeps you active. And I think that's part of enjoying life.
So again, all of these old belief systems really are myths. 102 is pretty impressive.
That is. My understanding is he's the gardener there in the South, and one of their and everybody goes to see him. But I have a colleague who's actually working now, and she's 69, and she's planning her encore career from age 70 to 90 because she said she basically needs it for financial reasons.
Okay.
And her view was, look at around you. Are you going to move or not? And she said, in my case, I'm not going to move. So who are the major employers in my area? And in her area, it's IT and healthcare. So then she said, you make a decision. What's age appropriate? Well, IT is probably not, because you need to be up on the current technologies, and they hire a lot of young people. So she said, what about healthcare? Well, healthcare is very age appropriate, because you have baby boomers who are retiring and needing services. And her comment is, who's better to take care of a geezer but a geezer? So her advice is make a plan. Just, think about what's age appropriate and proximity, in your proximity.
Dr. Tracey Wilen, we're going to take a break, and when we return, we will continue. And I'd like to take a look at the ways in which women are helping to redefine career paths. Folks, this is Dr. Pamela Brewer. You're listening to Mind Talk. We'll be right back. And we're back. This is Pamela Brewer, continuing the conversation about careers and ways to think about your current and next career. Dr. Wilen, a little bit ago, you talked about the importance of looking at the global universe when it comes to employment. If I am working at a local mom and pop store, do I need to think about a global market? And if so, why?
Well, I think it's a perfect time for mom and pop shops to think about the global market. I mean, you can create and start a business on an eBay in less than an hour and take global currency. That didn't exist years ago. I mean, you could just start your business internationally from day one. And that, to me, is very exciting for small venues, because in the past you had to see if you could export goods and set up distribution channels. So it's a totally different now, and I think that's much more exciting for businesses.
That's a really interesting perspective. Now, let's move on to women and career paths. You've said that women are really helping to redefine career paths. How is that the case? What are women doing?
Well, if we just look at the small businesses we were just talking about, women-owned businesses is one of the fastest-growing segments in the U.S. Women are saying, okay, I have great ideas. I have things that I've been working on and things I want to accomplish, and it may not happen in the corporate level, and I could be a great entrepreneur. I think shows like Shark Tank are really promoting to all of us in the U.S. that you can become an entrepreneur. With a great idea and some logic and good skills. Women are also, I had this research, I did 2 research studies a couple of years ago with my team on women in leadership. And what we found is that women actually ranked women highest on all modern-day leadership characteristics, skills, and attributes. Interesting enough, men ranked men highest. And so when I dived into the data, what I found is that it actually varies by generation. And that the younger generation, which is our X and Y, which today is actually age 53 and younger, they weren't really approaching the workforce and leadership seeing any kind of gender differences at all. They were looking for good leaders. And when you interview them and you try to understand, you realize it's because they grew up with working parents or single parents who were working. So they just didn't really have the mindset of the previous generations about men as leaders and women as leaders.
Interesting. So again, what we're talking about, although things are different and changing, they're expanding in wonderful, it sounds like, and exciting ways. What are some of the modern day leadership skills that are different from what perhaps folks are used to thinking about?
Yeah, so you think about industrial times or hierarchical firms. That's sort of in the past now, right? Firms today are flat. They operate on teams.
Okay.
We have shifted from, an industrial type of industry to people business. So it's all about being able to get things done using your teams and through people. And so people skills are highly valued, and some of the soft skills are pretty critical for leaders today, such as communication, negotiation, written skills, the ability to orchestrate and organize groups, to be able to negotiate, but have negotiations as more of a win-win for all rather than a win-lose haggle, because the business is much more complex today, and we just need people who are effective in coordination and communication.
So the days of he, and it's a he, that he makes a decision and everybody runs around to follow it and no questions are asked, those days are gone, essentially gone.
Yes, for many firms, right? I have to be careful about this because there are still firms that operate very hierarchical and very command control. And then I think what you'll find is the newer firms, the exciting firms, the firms that everybody hears about, wants to join, and they're in the news a lot, are the ones that are developing different techniques for their employees. The employees they realize are, part of the institution and have really good ideas and can help move the company forward. And so I think, you have to be careful and look at the firms that you're joining to understand the process and the protocols and what's the right fit for you.
It sounds like the firms who employ the skill and the openness of being curious are actually the ones who are leading the pack, who are leaping ahead, and those are the firms where you really can do a whole range of things and perhaps feel successful and be successful.
Yes, I mean, if you think, because I live in Silicon Valley, I mean, Google is, always highlighted as one of these firms, and it's, as you can find, it tracks a lot of people applying to the firm, but they accept, very few. And so, it's almost like the cream of the crop gets to participate and engage with these firms. And Google, by the way, is known for giving individuals a lot of autonomy and empowerment to start different kinds of businesses. And, I think that just naturally attracts people saying, oh, I'd like to be part of that movement. It's almost like a movement or that organization because I have much more flexibility than if I'm in a traditional firm where someone's telling me what to do every day.
Let me go back to LinkedIn for a moment. If you're someone who has had multiple careers, let's say you're in your 60s or 70s, and you really haven't ever done LinkedIn before, but now you're going to go and do it. Do you list the multiple careers that you have, or do you pay attention to the one that you want to get hired into, or how do you approach having many years of experience and having done many things?
Yes, no, and that is a good point because there are a lot of techniques that people can use to hide age, some people say, or they have too many job movements. So you're correct. If your most recent job is, the one that you should be pursuing probably because that's most likely what you'll get hired for, you can cut off past education dates. You can aggregate past experience into a bucket. So if you had 3 careers in marketing, then I would just put from this year back, I've had marketing roles in all of these areas. And what it does is it covers up all of the past companies you've worked for and jobs that nobody really cares about because they really only want to know about what you're doing today. Okay. But you're showing that everything in the past supports that marketing job that you're applying for today.
Now, for those who are leaving the workplace, they've retired from career number, whatever it is, and they're wanting to move on, do they need to hide their age?
No, again, it depends on what you're looking to do. So there are age-friendly industries, higher education, non-for-profit, healthcare. There are public sector, government. There are a number of industries that you can see that are very age-aligned, and then there's other industries which might be aligned for the younger generation. A lot of those, the technology firms. I think it just depends on what you're trying to do. On LinkedIn, you got to remember that profile is not a resume. That profile is a short snapshot to get someone really to look at you and want to know more. And the resume won't get you the job. The resume will get you the interview. So you have to look at these as strategic press pieces about you and proof points so that you can stand out among others to put yourself ahead to get picked or get noticed.
While we're talking about the things that are different in terms of looking for jobs and the way to expand how one thinks about doing a job search, you've also made the point that some of those sort of, I'll refer to them as age-old job search skills, are still important. The networking, the negotiating, the professionalism, the persistence. These were valued then, and they may have different buzzwords attached to them now, but they're still valuable.
Yes, at the end of the day, if you talk to recruiters, they'll still tell you that 75% of the jobs are secured through networking, people knowing people, because at the end of the day, people hire people. And it's much easier to hire someone that you know than a complete stranger. So no matter if you're applying to job boards and working with recruiters, you still need to go out and network. And it doesn't have to be that speed dating, type of networking. It can be getting to know one person and then their friend and then their friend. Because, companies would rather have employees refer in good people rather, than going out and trying to find people.
So, again, there was a time when you weren't supposed to fraternize with really people on the job, especially somebody who was a direct report to you. Has that changed or no?
Well, I think getting to know people at work is important. I encourage people to do informational interviews.
You do?
So that's
okay.
different than fraternizing or going out and drinking with somebody. So
Right.
if there's someone doing a job that I'd like to know more about, I would set up either a phone call or a one-on-one, and I would only make it like 15 to 20 minutes and ask them about their job and what they do, particularly if I'm meeting them on company time, right? So you want to be proactive in doing something for the firm. So that to me is an effective way of networking at work. One-on-one to get to know where are the potential job openings, or what are the skills and requirements if I would like to make a lateral move. What are the new business units that might be getting funded that I could find some opportunities for myself, and that can easily be done at work while you're before or after a meeting or while you're on your lunch break or something like that.
So clearly you place a high value on informational interviews, and I'm guessing that people are, for the most part, very willing to engage in them?
Yes, people are. People like to help people as long as it's not overused.
Okay.
So, I would encourage people, just 15 minutes of your time, maybe it's just a quick phone call, or buy them a cup of coffee, and don't overuse your time and have very specific questions, and even send them in advance and saying, I was thinking of changing from marketing into finance, and I was curious what kinds of skills and expertise that I would need, and you're an excellent financial manager. I was hoping that maybe you could give me a couple of tips. And then at the end of that informational interview, ask them if there's one or two other people that they might recommend that you call to continue your self-education and exploration.
All right. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will continue with Dr. Tracey Wilen. There have been many changes in the workplace, not the least of which is the diversity of workplaces, very different today from days in the past. So I'd like to focus on that when we return. My name is Dr. Pamela Brewer. You're listening to Mind Talk. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Pamela Brewer. Dr. Tracey Wilen, author of Employed for Life, 21st Century Career Trends. Talk to me about diversity in the workplace.
So diversity in the workplace is something that many people are struggling with, and the agreement is the more diverse workforce that you have, the more effective the organization can be. And I know that it's not even in all workforces, and so that's my encouragement is really for people to start their own businesses so they can change the landscape of that. But with that said, I think diversity in the workforce is important because it really reflects the customer base, and you want to if you want to increase sales and profitability, you need to have a workforce that's fully diverse.
Well, and there are many people who are holding their nose, marching towards, there's diversity in the workplace and I need to embrace it. But they really are holding their noses, and this is not the thing that they want to think about or do. Are you saying that they have to?
Well, I think you'll find that the companies that embrace a diverse workforce are ones that are going to continue to attract the talent, ones that will be recognized by the community as leaders, ones that, there's been studies done by the Catalyst Group, for example, on women, who have more women on their boards or women in executive positions actually have better numbers. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, if people do have diverse workforce, in addition to just having a comfortable work environment. No one's comfortable when work environments sway, in any one direction. But I don't know. I can't speak for these people. I have certainly worked in a variety of firms, and I understand the issues, and have made moves to really remove myself from environments that just weren't conducive to my personal growth, or thought of different ways that I could really operate successfully and happily in today's life.
The ability to move from one place to another, if you find that it is not in concert with what is important to you, quite frankly, is different for different people.
It is. It definitely is. And I think one of the messages that I give, women and men is, you have to be indispensable and you have to be in high demand if you want to make a lot of moves and call the shots, so to speak, about your own career. So if you're working in a firm, for example, technical skills are in very high demand today. So if you have those high demand skills, then you have more power in where you work, in your salary, in your benefits, in the decision making, and in title. So it's upon ourselves, again, to keep ourselves ahead of the curve so that we can make the choices that make sense for us.
You give some interesting statistics just around the issue of diversity. You say that in the 1980s, the United States workforce was 82% Caucasian, and most of those were certainly men. And now you're saying that people of color will form the majority of the population by 2050. Now, 2050 is a couple of years away, I grant you that. But again, how should we think about that today? That shift from primarily white and male to, by the year 2050, primarily people of color, male and female.
Right. Well, I think you see a lot of that already playing out in the workforce when you look at companies like Microsoft, who the CEO is of Indian descent, or if you look at Ursula Brown at Xerox, African American women. You're seeing that workforces are transitioning and, have more people, diverse people in different roles. And so that shift will continue to sway just on sheer numbers itself. So I think it's just, again, being able to find the firm, pick the firm, create the firm, that can support a lot of these new customers that we're all addressing.
So it sounds like you kind of need to just kind of get with the program. It is what it is. Things are changing, and to be mad about the fact that they're changing doesn't help you grow, pursue a career, change a career, or anything. It just helps you to be mad.
And that might be, me. I look at my lifespan and say, what are the certain things that I can change in my life today, right? And there's certain things I'm not going to be able to change, and I know somebody in the future will change them for future generations. So what can I do today for myself? What can I do for my colleagues or family? What can I do for women? What can I do for people today that actually can get done? And there's going to be certain societal transitions that may not happen in my lifetime, but eventually they will happen. And may not be me driving it, it might be someone else.
Well, that is a way to take off some of the pressure that some people may feel, and to sort of smooth out some of the anger or disappointment that folks may feel. It's almost taking us into another conversation. Let me shift back to what we're talking about, and that is employment for the 21st century, the skills and the tools and the changes that you're talking about today. Would you say that they are the same for profit as well as nonprofit entities, or is there a difference?
Yeah, well, the difference between the profit and non-for-profit is, having stock and shareholders. So, for-profit firms have different parameters that they have to attend to versus non-for-profit, but the mechanics of running the firms are pretty much the same. So some people would say that a non-for-profit doesn't have as much pressures as a for-profit, but I have colleagues who work for non-for-profits and find it, very high pressure. So, I think that those are just some of the differences between the two. I think you have to go look at, which type of organization and culture and products or services or beliefs, that you best align with. But actually, I do want to go back to your other comment, because one of the things that didn't exist that does today is the opportunity for people to get out of that box, so to speak, that if you're unhappy with where you work or the circumstances or the diversity, you actually have so many more options today to do something different, whether it's creating your own business or becoming self-employed or owning a franchise. And those were not as popular or as, available to many of us before.
True.
So I think we do have the ability to be able to change our direction or create our own opportunities much more so than in the past. And I get frustrated when people think that the only option in life is working for a big firm. And it isn't. There's so many more options.
When folks pick up your book, and again, the title is Employed for Life, 21st Century Career Trends. What do you want folks to gather? What do you want folks to learn at the end of the book?
So the book is about really a 360-degree look at careers and career planning today through the eyes of recruiters, HR, managers, hiring managers, and job seekers. Their whole viewpoint of what's different today than in the past. The one thing that the main message is that you really have to take ownership of your career today.
Yeah.
And that is a shift that a lot of people didn't anticipate or expect, or nor were they led to believe that they had to do that because of their parents' experience. And that ownership gives, I think, people much more empowerment to really set the pace of where they want their life. And so I dedicate a whole chapter to saying, just plan your life. Do a sheet of paper. Look out your 20s, 30s, 40s, up to your 90s. And make some plans and targets of what you want your life to look like, not what an organization wants your life to look like. And you set the plans and figure out your finances, your health, your skills, your education, and your employment track to get you to those targets.
So you don't have to live by default. You can live by intention.
Exactly.
And so much of what I read about in your book, I mean, there are all kinds of statistics that can kind of blow one's mind, but there's so much hope and energy and excitement in the possibilities of what could be that I'm not sure that you hear as much as would be useful.
So I think what people need to think about is like, I can't create your own career for you. What I can do is lay you out the roadmap and say the possibilities are here. It's really up to you to create your own path and your own opportunities, and don't blame the system, right? You know, there's inequity all over the world, and we can waste a lot of energy blaming the system for things that are out of our control. But rather, take control. Look at the resources, look at your skills, look at what you like to do and you do well, and think about what you like to do well, and get paid for, right? And make decisions that you can empower you to have a great life. Because, yes, you're living 100 years, but on the flip side, you're only living 100 years, so make it worth your while.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Tracey Wilen, how do people get in touch with you or learn more about your book or what you're doing?
Thank you. My website is TraceyWilen.com, TraceyWilen.com. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. On Facebook, I'm Dr. Tracey Wilen. My Twitter handle is @TraceyWilen. And I'm on YouTube and Pinterest, so I think you can find me.
And would you recommend, just a one parting question, would you recommend that those who are doing job searches be on all of those platforms as well?
No, actually, every social media platform is a different distribution channel.
Okay.
So I think people need to think about which one is going to make sense. If you're looking for a job, I would guide you towards LinkedIn first as the first platform.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you again, Dr. Tracey Wilen, and let us have that website one more time.
It's Tracey, Tracey, Wilen, Wilen.com.
All right. I just changed your last name, didn't I? I apologize for that. Thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you.